Again, I'm excited to talk to you guys today. We're streaming live on YouTube, on Facebook. I'm really excited to talk to all of you guys about today's new topics. We've been lately getting a lot of questions about, the whole Money Mondays thing and if it's a good idea. And we've been getting a lot of questions from you guys. So as you guys know, we started last week doing Money Mondays. And we've been doing this already for quite some time, of doing like different videos every Monday on a different topic, and every single week we'll be discussing a different subject in regards to money. So today we have actually decided to actually bring up a couple of your questions that many of you have been asking us over the last 7 days. So we've strongly encouraged that these live events that we're going to be doing every single Monday night, we're going to be streaming them live on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, and we're actually going to be answering all of your questions on anything that has to do with money related. So if you have a question about investments, about 401ks, about 403bs, about mutual funds, about stocks, bonds, real estate, is it a good time to refinance? Like, this is exactly a perfect location where you can get really unbiased advice as far as what is the best decision for you to be making when it comes to your money. Because unfortunately, I don't know why this is, but people nowadays, everyone considers themselves an expert in the area of finance. Your cousin, your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, like everyone is giving you advice as far as what is the right decision to be making when it comes to your money. And the reality is that these people, although they might have the right intention, that still doesn't mean that they're giving you the best advice. That still doesn't mean that they're thinking about all the angles. And this is exactly the reason why we have decided to put these classes together, or put these events together every Monday night. And just to answer your question. So over the last couple days, we've been getting a couple questions from you guys, from many of you that are existing clients of ours. Some of you are not clients of our office, and that's perfectly fine. But we wanted to just make sure that we're answering all of your questions in regards to the area of your money. So if you have any questions in regards to anything financial topic related, whether it's real estate, whether it's retirement accounts, whether it's investments, anything that is money related, you can ask us any question that you might have in regards to your money, and you can ask us that on YouTube. We're streaming right now live on YouTube. We're on Facebook as well. We're on Instagram. So any question that you might have, just go ahead and ask it. Don't be shy. It's perfectly fine. Even if you have credit card debt, even if you're thinking about making a decision where other people might think that it's a bad decision, it's perfectly fine. Just make sure you just ask us your question, and I can gladly answer them live here on any digital platform that you might be watching us on right now. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I have 3 questions that we've gotten over the last couple of days on just financial topics related that many of you have been concerned about in regards to your money. And I'm actually going to start off with the first one that we got from Martha a couple of days ago. So literally the same night that we did last Money Mondays, we got this message from Martha, and it was a pretty interesting one. So her question is, I'm 60 years old, and I know the importance of having a plan for long-term care. We'll get to that right now in a second, as far as like what is long-term care, because I know that a lot of people hear of the word long-term care, but the reality is most people don't even know what it is. And her question is, what is the difference between a traditional long-term care policy and a hybrid long-term care policy? All right, Martha. So I think the first thing that I think we all need to understand is, what is long-term care? So the reality is that we are all going to get to a point in our life, whether it's when we're 60 years old, 70 years old, 80 years old, 90 years old, but we are usually all going to get to a point in our life where we are not going to be able to take care of ourselves on our own. And what I mean by is, I'm not talking about financially, but I'm talking about us physically. And usually that begins to happen at usually our later stage of life, maybe when you hit 80, 85. Like, I can tell you, for me personally, my grandfather, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's when he was 77 years old, and my family and I, and pretty much my entire household, we all needed to live with the fact that he started forgetting our names. He started forgetting who we were. He started forgetting his wife's name. And it was a very scary time. I'm sure many of you have probably dealt with something similar in your life. But during that period of time, my grandfather needed to be taken care of. And the reality is my grandfather was a really, really large guy. He was, when he passed away, he was weighing almost 280 pounds, like very strong, stocky guy. And the reality was my grandmother couldn't take care of him. Even though he started getting Alzheimer's, it even got to the point that he couldn't recognize my grandmother. And when that happened, I think that the main concern now was, okay, who's going to now take care of my grandfather? And my grandfather needed to, he got to a point where he couldn't shower on his own. He couldn't get dressed on his own. He couldn't literally be able to even go to the bathroom on his own. And those were moments where now as a family, we now needed to make a decision about if we are really going to, who's going to be the person that's going to be taking care of him, and how is he going to be taken care of? And the reality is that we now needed to make that very uncomfortable decision, but it was a financial decision at the same time, where my grandfather now needed to have someone taking care of him for pretty much at least 12 to 16 hours a day. And that was going to cost a lot of money. And unfortunately, close to about 70% of individuals nowadays are going to fall in that situation where they are going to need some sort of care. And that's called long-term care, where you now are in a stage of your life, you're at a stage in your life where now you can't take care of yourself on your own. And when that day does happen, when that day does occur, because 70% of us are going to fall in that situation, now the next question turns into, which is, how are you now going to take care of yourself when that day happens? And I'm not talking about it on a physical level, but on a financial level, because the reality is you're now going to need to pay someone to now come and take care of you at your home, or you're going to have to go to an ALF, or you're going to have to go to a nursing home, or you're going to have to go to, the Palace in Coral Gables, which is a beautiful location, which a lot of people wish that they can go there as their final place before they pass away. But the reality is that this topic of long-term care, in my opinion, I feel that so many people ignore it. So many people think that it's something that we should not even consider. But I want to ask you this question. When you hit 85 years old and you cannot take care of yourself on your own, how are you now going to make sure that you could afford to have someone take care of you? Because the reality is that if you want to have someone come into your home every single day, and that person is now showering you, feeding you, bathing you, and you have that type of special care in your home, you're going to be looking at spending anywhere between $40,000 to maybe $100,000 per year, depending on the quality of care, depending on how many hours you need. But that's going to be a lot of money. And what that does is that the little bit of money that you were going to leave now your heirs when you were going to pass away is going to now be wiped away in medical expenses due to long-term care. And that's exactly what ended up happening with my grandfather. My grandfather, when he got to that point where now he was not able to take care of himself, now his little bit of savings that he did have needed to be completely consumed for his medical attention. And now when he ended up passing away, he actually ended up passing away, leaving my grandmother with nothing. Yes, they still had a house, but all of their savings, all of their retirement money was completely wiped away in medical expenses. And so this is the reason why people need to strongly consider, long-term care policies. So Martha, to kind of answer your question, is it a good idea to have long-term care? Absolutely. The question is, what is the best type of policy when I am going to consider a long-term care policy? And I can really tell you that the traditional type of long-term care policy works like the following. You might pay $300, $400, maybe $500 a month. So it'll be a couple $100s a month. And actually long-term care can get very expensive the older you get. So let's say an average 60-year-old. So an average 60-year-old will end up spending anywhere between probably $350 to maybe somewhere around $500 or $600 a month. And the way it will work is that the day that you now can't take care of yourself on your own, and usually it's defined as an individual that gets to a stage where they are in a long-term care state. So the definition of a person that's in a long-term care state is usually if they cannot perform 2 of the 6 activities of daily living. So for example, if you can't shower on your own, you can't eat on your own, you can't bathe on your own, you can't get dressed on your own, you can't go to the bathroom on your own. In other words, you can't control yourself, or you can't transfer. So those are the usual 6 activities of daily living. It's what we all need to be able to function as a normal human being on a daily basis. So if you cannot perform 2 of those 6 activities over a 90-day period, usually you are now classified as an individual that falls in a long-term care state. So now any type of long-term care policy that you have will now be activated. And at that point, you now will begin to get a monthly stream of income to be able to pay for that long-term care expense. So usually they might say something like, we'll give you $150 per day for you to be able to spend inside a long-term care facility, or for you to be able to go to a facility that focuses on long-term care, or like a nursing home or something along those lines. So now that $150 a day, if you translate it into 30 days out of the month, that's $4,500 a month. And you might have to pay $300, $400, $500, $600 every single month between the time you're 60 until the time you fall into the long-term care state. So let's say that happens at age 80. So at age 80, now you are now in a position where now you can't take care of yourself on your own. So at that point in time, that's exactly the point in time where now your long-term care policy will be activated, and they'll begin to pay $150 a day into that long-term care facility. So that is the traditional type of long-term care policy. You'll pay $300, $400, $500, $600 a month. You might pay that for, a period of probably 5, 10, 15, 20 years, depending on how long it takes for you to get to that, that state physically. But the problem now is the following. If you paid for 20 years this policy, and you just happen to go to bed one night and pass away overnight, then the problem with that is that now you've paid into something that is never going to be used. Meaning you now are going to go into a long-term, you now passed away overnight and you spent $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 in payments over a 20-year period, and you never ended up using the long-term care policy. So that is the problem that I see personally with the traditional type of long-term care policies. Because what happens is you're now paying and paying and paying, and then now you just drop dead overnight and you paid into something $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 and it was never used. So that's why, in my opinion, sometimes you might want to reconsider, instead of using a traditional long-term care policy, what you might rather have is something called a hybrid long-term care policy, like Martha was asking. So the hybrid long-term care policy works like the following. You'll pay the same thing, maybe $300, $400, $500 a month, and you can actually choose how much you want to pay. But the benefit is, the way it will work is that they'll give you a designated amount of money. So what they might say is something like, okay, you'll pay $400 a month, every single month, from the age of 60 until you fall into a long-term care state. But the way it will work is that they'll give you a designated amount of money. So in other words, it's not unlimited resources. They'll tell you something like, okay, you pay $400 a month, but you have $400,000 that you could use for any long-term care benefit. So the way it would work is you'll pay the $400 every single month, the way a normal long-term care policy would work. But you pay the $400 and you'll pay for this until, let's just say, you now fall into a long-term care state. But now, when you fall into the long-term care state, now you begin to spend the $400,000 slowly, and eventually what ends up happening is you are spending down the $400,000 in a long-term care facility. So if the long-term care facility is costing you, call it $60,000 a year, well, now you have $400,000 that you could use slowly, and you'll spend down the $400,000. But this is the beautiful piece about a hybrid long-term care policy, is that now the benefit is that if you never use the long-term care policy, the $400,000 for you while you're still alive, the benefit is that the $400,000 can be inherited to your beneficiaries as a traditional life insurance policy. And this is why they call it a hybrid long-term care policy. Because the way it works is that now you have a long-term care benefit, but at the same time, if you never use the long-term care usage out of it, because you just happen to drop dead overnight, heart attack, cancer, whatever it is, then now you can have the $400,000 that would at least go to your children, your spouse, your beneficiaries, and that money at least transfers over. So with that said, if you are considering a long-term care policy, in this case, Martha, I would probably strongly consider you to do a comparison of both, but I would really recommend you to look into what's called a hybrid long-term care policy, because it will probably serve a lot more functions than a traditional long-term care policy. So I know it was a very long answer, but I really hope that it kind of gives you a very good guidance on that. Now, another question I just got from another lady, and this is a little bit of a tougher question, and I actually just got this one last night. So her name is Maria. Pretty much her story is she's 68 years old. She said, I'm 68 years old and I just lost my husband. I lost his Social Security check and I also lost his pension. What can I do now? I have almost $5,000 a month in total expenses. So Maria, I know that it's a very tough, thing to deal with, losing a family member, even worse, a spouse. But what I can really tell you in regards to this is when this happens, this is not only a loss on an emotional level, but this has a very strong impact on a financial level. And this happens with a lot of people. This happens, as a matter of fact, over 80% of deaths occur first with a man. So Maria, the fact that this is happening to you, this is actually very unfortunate. It feels like it's not normal, but it's very normal, especially with women, where their man usually, their spouse will pass away before them. And this is something to strongly consider and think about, because the day the fact that happened to you, Maria, I think what you need to start thinking about is, how are you now going to be able to sustain yourself moving forward? You just told me you just lost his Social Security check, and you just told me that you lost his pension. So I don't know how much his Social Security check and his pension is, but whatever that amount of money is, I'm sure it was helping you to be able to pay your bills every single month. So if it was $3,000 a month or $4,000 a month, that's money that you guys were counting on every single month. And I'm guessing now that, Maria, you're 68 years old, you're now only getting your Social Security check. So you are not getting his Social Security check, I'm guessing, because his was probably smaller than your Social Security check, but you're also not getting his pension. So the first thing that I would tell you, Maria, what I would figure out is, how much are your expenses every month? Like, that is, I think, the priority number one that you need to do, is you need to figure out what are your monthly bills for you to be able to live a comfortable lifestyle. Is it $3,000 a month? Is it $5,000 a month? Is it $10,000 a month? Whatever your number is, Maria. But you need to figure out how much money you need every single month coming in, so that you could maintain your bills every single month. So then from that, let's just say, for example, let's say you need $5,000 a month, Maria. And your Social Security check, Maria, is, call it $2,000 a month. So that means your bills are $5,000, but your social is $2,000. That means you have what's called a gap. That gap is a $3,000 monthly gap. So now the next question you need to ask yourself, Maria, is, where are you going to get the $3,000 every single month to be able to cover that gap, right? Whatever that gap that you might have. It might be $3,000, who knows? It might be even more, or maybe it's less. But you have to ask yourself this question is, where are you going to get the $3,000 monthly gap to be able to cover all of your monthly bills? Now, the next question is, you have to figure out is, how much money do you have between all of your accounts? Between your savings accounts, your retirement accounts, 401ks, IRAs, annuities, like investment accounts, real estate properties. you need to figure out what is the total amount that you have in all of your investments. And then what you need to start figuring out is, if you have, call it $200,000 in all of your investments, and you have a gap of $3,000, now what you need to start thinking about is how to get your $200,000 to be able to generate you enough income to be able to pay all of your bills and not let your money run out. So what I can strongly recommend you, Maria, to do is you should really go to a retirement planning expert. That's, I think, the best answer I can give you, because what they're usually going to end up doing is they're going to build out what's called the retirement income plan. In other words, you now need to know how much your gap is and figure out, if you have 200,000 in investments or 500,000 in investments, how long that money's going to last you. Now, maybe in your situation, you have nothing in investments, you have no savings, you have no retirement, and you were relying 100% on just your husband's pension and your husband's social and your social. But now that he's not around, now you're only relying on your social. So now you possibly don't even have enough to pay the bills, and I understand that. But what we need to start thinking about is, how much do you have in investments? Because you now need to make sure that your investments are large enough to be able to sustain you the rest of your life without you having to become a burden to your children, if you have children, or your grandchildren, if that's the case. So we need to start thinking about things like this, because this day, unfortunately, will happen with 80% of women. 80% of women are going to lose their spouse first. And when that day happens, you now need to start thinking about, how are you going to sustain yourself thereafter when he is not around, or for that matter, she's not around, because this can happen both ways. So we really need to start strongly consider this about the impact overall on when this happens. Now, for those of you, again, that still have your spouses, again, you are in a position that you really are blessed, but we need to think about something else. I would strongly recommend, for those of you that are younger than your spouse, get life insurance on your spouse. Strongly consider that. Get a life insurance policy on your partner, because what that could help you with is that the day that they're not around, you can now inherit $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $700,000 in a massive inheritance that you could end up getting just simply because you put life insurance on your spouse. So again, just strongly something to consider, especially those of you that are thinking about, like, what happens the day that my spouse is not around. It's something that, unfortunate, spouses don't live together until the end. People always have that saying of, like, I'm going to live together with my spouse until we both die, but unfortunately, that's not how life works. The way life really works is you both are going to live a 20, 30, 40, 50 year period, hopefully together. But unfortunately, one of the two is going to pass away. And when that day happens, that one of the two passes away, you need to think about the impact of the remaining spouse. That's a massive impact. I see you, Barbell Bacon, asking me a question. Or can I just put life insurance on Jess without her approval? I guess that's a joke, right? But yeah, man, you actually have to get approval from whoever you're buying life insurance on anybody on. I mean, you can definitely get life insurance on anybody as long as the insurance company approves you or approves that individual. But what I would strongly recommend you is, you got to make sure that your spouse approves, because again, you never know, something might happen. But yeah, thanks, Annabelle, for the nice little comment. I know you love me sometimes. Thanks, Annabelle. You're so funny. By the way, if you're watching this live right now, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, please ask us any questions. I'm trying to do this Money Mondays every week with you guys, every Monday, to answer any questions that you guys might have. If you have a question about money, whether it's retirement, investments, life insurance, real estate, any money question, that's what we're doing this Money Mondays for. So we're trying to do it live. So please take advantage of these few minutes that we can talk about money with you guys. So again, you can just write it on the comment section. I'll try to answer any questions that you might have. Annabelle, I know you're watching right now. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and ask. Last question that we actually got from someone else here. It's regarding a property. So let me see how I can. All right, so it's a couple here that's asking. I don't know anything about them, but what I do know is that she's 43, he's 47. So his question is, I'm planning on moving to a new house, or I guess they're planning on moving into a new house. Should I be renting or buying with everything that is going on in the world right now? So I think it all depends, right? I mean, it all depends on your market. It depends on a lot of things. But I guess the way I can answer it is the following. I am not a lot of people think that renting is throwing away money. And I can put it to you in a very simple way. But renting is absolutely not throwing away money. There is nothing wrong with renting, and there is nothing wrong with buying. And buying is not better, and renting is not better. We can't like just automatically say that one of them is better than another, because I can tell you that it all depends on every individual circumstance. What I can tell you is, before you make a decision, whether you're going to go buy and you're going to go rent, that's something that you should go and talk to, an advisor about, and ask them the question, hey, I'm planning on renting or I'm planning on buying. What's a better decision for my specific situation? You'd be surprised how many people think that buying is 100% of the time better than renting. And that is absolutely not true. Renting is many times a lot better than buying. But again, it all depends on the circumstance of the individual. But to answer your question right now, man, in regards to the renting or buying with the world that we're living in right now, what I can tell you is this, if you're planning on buying a property, there is a very high chance that property prices right now, especially in South Florida, because the majority of our community that watches us and follows us is in South Florida. So I don't know where you're living in, what city you're living in or what country you're living in right now. But in South Florida right now, prices have not really plummeted yet. But what I could tell you is there is a very high chance, with everything that we're living in, with the amount of unemployment rate, where it's going to shoot up eventually, there is a very high likelihood that real estate prices are going to drop. We just don't know how long it's going to happen before it triggers. It might be 6 months, 12 months, maybe 2 years before it actually hits. But property prices more than likely are going to take some sort of hit, especially because of the unemployment rate. This event, even if we get back to normal 3 months from now, 6 months from now, even if we get to a normal world, that still doesn't mean that businesses and companies haven't been massively hit. And still this does mean that there are going to be a lot of unemployment. And when there's a lot of unemployment, that pretty much just simply means that people can't pay for their mortgages. So what I can tell you is, if you're thinking about buying, what I can tell you is you have a higher likelihood of property prices going down than there is a likelihood of property prices going up. So what I can tell you is that if you're planning on buying and you're thinking about staying there long term, I think there's nothing wrong with buying. But what I can tell you is you might want to consider buying a property possibly about a year or a year and a half. You want to wait what ends up happening with real estate, because definitely real estate is going to feel some sort of hit. We just don't know how long it's going to be before we feel that hit. It might be a year from now, 2 years from now, but we do know that eventually it's going to happen. It's just a matter of math. When there's high unemployment rate, that means there is going to be a higher foreclosure rate. If there's a higher foreclosure rate, that automatically drives properties down. Now, a lot of people are saying, yeah, but Sebastian, all these people from up north, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maine, all these people from up north are coming down to Florida to buy properties, and that's causing property prices to sustain itself. Yes, that is true, but once we go to a normal world again, that level of velocity of purchasing a property is probably not going to be at the same rate. So again, I would probably want to be very careful if you're planning on buying a property right now. There's a very high chance that property prices are going to go down. Could they stay where they're at? Yes. But are they going to go a lot higher? I probably doubt that. So, and again, when you're renting a property, you really want to think about a lot of other factors. You really want to think about the fact that you're renting, you're not having to pay for property taxes. You don't need to pay for insurance. You possibly don't need to pay for an association, depending on if you're living in a community. You don't have to worry about repairs. You don't have to worry about paying changing ACs or fixing kitchens or fixing bathrooms. You don't need to worry about those things. And you don't need to worry about putting a 30, 40, 50, or $100,000 down payment when you're buying the property or when you're renting a property. And when you're selling the property, you don't have to worry about paying a 6% commission to the realtor. So don't think that automatically, because you're renting, you're throwing away money. Renting is in no way throwing away money. As a matter of fact, renting, you're throwing away money. I will say that. But buying, you're also throwing away money. Why? When you're buying, you're also paying interest on the loan. So you're throwing away money, if you want to call it. If the property taxes, you're throwing away money. Insurance, you're throwing away money. Association, you're throwing away money. So it can go either way. You just have to do the math as far as figuring out what's the better decision, but there is in no way a better decision. I see you, man, asking another question here, Mr. Bacon. So what I can tell you, he's asking me a question about stocks. He's asking, what are the top 3 companies that I should be monitoring to buy stocks in? So what I can probably tell you in regards to stocks is you want to really be careful whenever you're investing in the stock market. I can tell you that it all depends on, are you going to go and grab all of your money and throw all of your money into 1, 2, or 3 stocks? So let's say you have $30,000 to your name and you go grab everything that you're worth and you're going to go put all of your money, 100% of your money into like 1 stock or 2 stocks. I can tell you that's a big, big, big mistake. You don't want to do that. What I could tell you that you probably do want to consider is you want to start thinking about a lot of technology funds, technology companies. And the reason I say this is because the world that we're living in right now, the technology industry, if you're looking at how it's doing and how it's going to more than likely do, it's already been doing very, very well. And it's probably going to keep doing well, at least for the next, year or 2 years, depending if we have, a recession that we enter in or whatever it is. But the technology industry, I would say, instead of thinking about, what company is going to come out with a special cure and is going to come up with this pharmaceutical, with a cure to the virus, instead of thinking that route, what I would probably strongly consider is thinking about, how do I go about looking for an industry that is going to be strong over the next 6, 12, or 24 months? Are you going to probably, quadruple your money? You're probably not going to quadruple it, but what I would probably tell you is you're more than likely not going to lose your money than if you try to go choose a specific stock that's going to come up with a virus. And I would probably stick to sectors. So instead of going and trying to buy 1, 2, or 3 stocks, why not just buy a sector, right? So why not buy the technology sector or buy the pharmaceutical sector rather than you going and buying individual stocks? So the way you would want to look that up is you might want to consider looking up, instead of individual stocks, look into what's called ETFs. So you might want to look into ETFs that focus in each of those individual sectors. So rather than going and buying 1 or 2 stocks, why not go buy a pharmaceutical ETF, an exchange traded fund, or a technology ETF? I can't legally recommend any specific ETFs, on these live streams, but, just look them up. There's a bunch of different options that you can do. And again, just go to your advisor and just make sure you're asking him, hey, what are the best options? So with that said, I think I answered, the 3 questions that we got this week. Again, if you're watching us right now live on Facebook, you're on YouTube, you're watching us on Instagram, please do me a favor and just write any questions that you guys might have. Next Monday, I'll be answering any question that you might have regarding money. We try to do this every single week. I'm trying to do this every single week and just be able to add some sort of value in the area of the questions that you guys might have in regards to your money. So with that said, if you're watching this on Facebook, please go ahead and share this on your Facebook channel. I really, really appreciate it. It's the only way we can get this message out to as many people and families right now that are especially in need in the area of money. So with that said, I will see you guys here next Monday at 8 o'clock. And this Wednesday, we are actually doing another live class talking everything that has to do with business owners. If you're planning on starting a business, if you have your own business, any questions as far as should you have a corporation, what's the right type of corporation that you should have when you're structuring a business? Is it a good idea to have a C corporation, an S corporation, an LLC? So this Wednesday, we're going to be talking everything that has to do with business owners. So if you're a business owner, if you're planning on starting a business, if you own real estate, you are a business owner as well. So you should tune in this Wednesday at 6:30. We're going to be answering all of your questions in regards to how to structure a business the appropriate way. So with that said, we'll be seeing you here this Wednesday at 6:30. And we're also going to be streaming again next Money Mondays live at 8 p.m. next Monday. Take care, guys. Have a wonderful night.